Quite a few years ago now, I served for 10 weeks as a student chaplain at a big hospital up in Ohio. This was part of my learning and my training to eventually come here and be your minister. During that particular summer, I became friends with one of the other chaplains, a young man named Yoshiharu. Yoshi, as we called him, was preparing to become a Catholic priest, like almost all of the other chaplains at this particular medical facility. I, on the other hand, was that hospital's very first Unitarian Universalist chaplain, and also the one and only openly gay clergy member there. While he was quite an open-minded and progressive kind of guy, my friend Yoshi could just not seem to get his head around what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. When I would describe our congregations to him, he would smile and then get this puzzled look on his face. I wonder if you've had that experience trying to describe you to somebody. He'd ask, wait a minute, so your church does not have a creed? I mean, how can you be a religion without a specific set of beliefs for everyone to follow? I think that Yoshi kind of felt sorry for me. I mean, to his way of thinking, it would be pretty much impossible to successfully serve as a minister or leader of a group of people who did not all adhere to the same theological teachings. Now, of course, to my way of thinking, that is exactly what makes being your minister and being a Unitarian Universalist so interesting, exciting, and worthwhile in the first place. In the chair in front of you, if you're here in our sanctuary today, there are two UU hymnals that contain many of the songs that we sing here on Sunday morning. The older gray hymn book is called Singing the Living Tradition. We often refer to Unitarian Universalism as a living tradition, and we do so for several reasons. The first reason is that we are a faith movement which is always growing, always changing, always transforming. What our churches were like 100 years ago is quite different than what they are like today. What this congregation was like just 10 years ago has changed over time, not only in name, but in spirit and substance and personality. And that is the way it is supposed to be. The great 20th century theologian James Luther Adams described this aspect of our identity as religious people by saying that we affirm revelation is never sealed. Revelation is continuous. He meant that rather than following truths and teachings handed down to us in scriptures and prophets of long distant times, we assume that wisdom and guidance are available to us not only from ancient and traditionally sacred sources, but also from people here with us today, and most importantly, from our own lived experience. Unitarian Universalism calls us to stay curious, to consider ourselves lifelong learners, to not get stuck in one particular way of thinking for too long, and to be open to new people, new ideas, new truths, new perspectives, some that we may have never even considered before. And thus, when it comes to what we do, how we do it, what activities we engage in, and even what personal beliefs we hold. Giving the reason, well, that's just the way we've always done it, is not an acceptable answer. At least not in this church. Now, this does not mean that we do not value our history and the truths that have been revealed to us from people of our past. It just means that we are not confined by them. We have the freedom to interpret old ideas in exciting new ways. We have the power to let go of them if they no longer serve us or are outdated. We possess the ability to imagine and create whole new ways of being together if we choose to. Now, I have to admit to you that when I first met my friend Yoshi, the chaplain, he had a black and white little priest collar, and he was very reverent and very pious about his religion. And I was very quick to place onto him many of the stereotypes about Catholics that I had been taught as a child growing up in an evangelical Lutheran church. You know, they're all judgy. They're all closed-minded. They're all just following the crowd. But lo and behold, actually getting to know Yoshi, hearing his stories, his passions, his thoughts, watching him in action, I found that for him, Catholicism led him to be incredibly generous, astoundingly compassionate, and openly curious about me and my very odd religion. There were more than a few times while we were serving together as chaplains that I wished that I could be as good a person as Yoshi. And it was his faith that made him that way. Rather than closing him down to others, it inspired him to be present and caring. By teaching me to let go of my assumptions, he made me a better Unitarian Universalist. Perhaps you may have had an experience like that. A time when someone or something surprised you and led you to some new understanding about yourself or about those around you. Whenever and however that happens, that is Unitarian Universalism alive within us. Now, the other reason that we call our form of religion a living tradition is that we are a faith that is centered in love and defined by a set of shared values rather than a common concept of God or the afterlife. We are blessed here at All Peoples to be quite diverse in our views, our cultures, our identities, and our experiences. And we treasure those differences as an essential part of who we are as a community. Last fall, during one of our Sunday services, I had a big giant bulletin board that I brought up, and we played this little game that I had called You or Not You. You may remember that I had a long list of religious concepts, practices, social attitudes, and theological orientations. And I asked you to decide whether you thought each one of them belonged within our communal identity as UUs or outside it. Now, the point of this exercise was to challenge what I consider to be a problematic notion. The notion that as UUs, we can believe anything we want to. Now, if that were true, then ideas and actions which violate our core values and cause harm to others and to ourselves would belong here. But they do not. Earlier in today's service, we had a responsive form of our covenant that Ed led us in. And the very first line that he spoke to us was, "We believe in freedom and responsibility." The responsibility we share as UUs comes not from simply affirming our values as good ideas that everybody should follow. It comes from actively trying to live by those values ourselves and allowing them to direct us and transform us. That is the living part of being a living tradition. In just a little over a week, some people with some pretty scary ideas will ascend to power in our federal government. People promising mass deportations and threatening to invade other countries. Meanwhile, Facebook announced this week that they are no longer going to be fact-checking, and they are going to allow certain forms of hate speech. Wildfires, winter storms, intensified by global climate change, have ravaged much of our nation. Last week, right in my neighborhood in the South End, Louisville officials came in and shut down a local restaurant just because they were trying to offer shelter to unhoused people during the weather emergency. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza, the violent assaults in Ukraine continue. And Jimmy Carter is no longer with us. Last week in my sermon, I told you that I believe the only way for our all peoples community to respond to all that is happening and all that is likely to come is for us to keep sticking to our values, to not give in or give up, but to double down on being the love that we want to see in the world, to live our faith like never before. What does living Unitarian Universalism actually look like and feel like? Well, maybe it's being that kind and helpful neighbor in the story that Barb shared with us earlier. Maybe it's being willing to sacrifice a little of our own comfort and privilege to amplify the voices and the stories of those who are being silenced and suppressed. Maybe it's being a force for liberation, connecting our humanity with that of others, not just having another discussion about the issues and the politics of the matter. Living Unitarian Universalism means showing up and speaking out when the time comes. It means letting our liberal religious voice be heard, loud and clear, right here in Louisville. This coming Saturday morning, our congregation will be joining with others for a rally downtown in front of Metro Hall on Jefferson Street. This rally is being organized by the group Kentuckians for Reproductive Freedom, and it will be an opportunity for all peoples to publicly show our support for women's rights and for LGBTQ people, just 2 days before Inauguration Day. It is one of many such rallies which are going to be taking place across our state and all across the nation. Now, if you think that you do not need to go, that others in our congregation attend rallies like that, but not you, the time has come to change that way of thinking. The time has come to stop talking about justice and to live your Unitarian Universalism. As someone whose basic rights, whose marriage may very well be in danger in the coming years, and as someone who knows and loves others who are being targeted right now for discrimination, others who are suffering from the lack of access to health care, I need you to show up. We are going to be carpooling from our church parking lot at 9:15 on Sunday morning, and there's going to be no more snow out there, by the way, to worry about. The rally begins at 10 o'clock in front of Metro Hall. I will be there on Sunday morning, and I really hope that you can too. I'm sorry, Saturday morning. See, y'all know. There we go. And to remind you, we are going to be sending you emails this week to give you all the details. It's one of those just bring your warm body and show up. Among the core values that hold us together in beloved community here at All Peoples is our reverence for interdependence. We celebrate the truth that we are all connected, that everything is connected. This means that my actions or my lack of action matters. That my choices and your choices of where and when to show up matter. They will and they do have an impact. By choosing not to be bystanders, but active participants, we will send a powerful message to everyone that we are a church that is committed to living its values. The reality of our interdependence also tells us that none of us have to do this, have to face this, have to try to be good people amid diversity and adversity alone. There is strength in numbers, but only when we show up for each other. In our reading this morning, Julian Jamaica Soto said this: "In this kind of time, now is better than later. Now I love you. Now I witness your struggle and mine. Sometimes one answer is to be a yes in the face of every no." My friends, let us live our faith this week by being a yes. A yes for justice. A yes for liberation. A yes for love. Amen.